They started with email, e-bills, e-banking, e-commerce, e-wallets, e-what's not. So it's only logical that sometime they will talk about e-wheels as well. Electric vehicles, that's what we're going to discuss. This is Mad About Markets. Hi, Ritu.
Hi, Mangalam. You know, electric vehicles as a concept is not that new anymore. I mean, you remember the toy cars we drove, right? The original electric vehicles.
The ones that took us from our rooms to our halls.
Well, absolutely, those ones. And now, you know, we've come to a situation where the old players, the new players, everybody wants a seat on this car. And we're not saying it. They're saying it. Listen to what they said.
We may be, we are not sure about this, but we may be on the cusp of a change, almost a disruption. There is also something to be said about attacking, as opposed to just defending, about creating something new, a new business model, a new company, a new brand maybe, or a new brands maybe, yes, with a new talent from top to bottom.
We are very clear that the tipping point will come. We can't predict exactly when, but because that depends on so many factors. But we want to be sort of future ready.
The old and the new, they all said it. So let's dive right into it.
Wait, you mean drive into it?
Okay, wordplay, drive into it. So to drive home the point, we put all the concerns, grievances, confessions, fears about electric vehicles, the frequently asked questions to people, and sought consumer insights on the same. It was a poll created and conducted on social media of CNBC TV 18 with over 1,300 respondents. And here's where we analyze the responses and crunch some numbers collated with facts as well.
Okay, let's start with the first one. The first question that we posed to our respondents: are you going to pick an electric vehicle over the traditional vehicles with an internal combustion engine? And guess what the answer was? The majority said, that is almost 3 out of 4 indicated that they are going to pick an electric vehicle over the traditional models. And here's a disclaimer, I'm also one of those 3 that voted for the electric vehicles, and why not?
I immediately jumped and chose my side. I'm still traditional here. I have some fears.
All right.
So, that's exactly what the poll showed, but here's what the numbers indicate. The total number of passenger electric cars on planet Earth, they crossed the 1 crore mark in 2020. That's a milestone, because this number just 10 years ago in 2010 was 17,000, jumping all the way up to 1 crore by 2020. The EV penetration in 2020 was close to around 5% of the global market. 5 out of 100 cars in the world were electric vehicles. This is expected to be 10 out of 100 cars by 2025, and the number could cross to 17%. Imagine by 2030, 2 out of 10 cars on the roads will be electric vehicles. A year when total car sales fell 16%, that was 2020, the pandemic year, EV registrations actually increased by 41%. The Indian EV market, a little under 2.5 lakh units by FY21, is likely to jump all the way to 1.1 crore by FY31. Experts expect the penetration of e-scooters, which is just around 1% currently, in 5 years to jump to 10%, and in FY31 to be 36%. So 1 in 3 scooters would be electric. The same for cars, 4-wheelers, 0.2% right now, likely to grow 8-fold to 4% by FY26. And by FY31, it goes on to 12%. So again, 1 in 10 cars, electric vehicles. So that is massive growth expectations. But let's move on to the other important questions. Will people really put their money where their mouths are? The big question was, will you pay more, a premium for electric vehicles? The respondents said 4 out of 10. They said that they will perhaps pay a premium. But then the question again is, how much are they willing to shell out? Here's what our poll threw up. Almost 60% said that they will pay no more than 10% over what a traditional internal combustion engine costs them. And about 26%, the slightly richer ones, wanted to pay slightly higher, close around 20%. So the short point really is 3 out of 4 people not willing to pay more than 25% over a current car in terms of premium. Where do you stand there?
Well, I'm willing to pay up to 10%, but let's look at the real picture. I mean, is it true that electric vehicles are that much more expensive than the traditional ones? So we did a comparison where we looked at the Ola electric two-wheeler S1 that's just been launched, compared that with the popular traditional two-wheeler, that is the Honda Activa. Let's compare the prices to begin with. First, The Ola S1 is priced at $99,999, but this is the cost after all the subsidies, and we're factoring in a fair bit of assumptions here on the electricity cost and the fuel cost, etc. to make it simpler, and this is the analysis for the first year of ownership. A Honda Activa will set you back by almost about 80,000 rupees, so that is as far as the initial cost analysis is concerned. Now on charging an Ola S1, let's assume with the electricity cost that we factored in, you spend about 3,000 in the year. For an Activa, of course, you don't need to. There you have the fuel cost of almost 14,000 compared to 3,000 for an Ola. That's what you will have to spend in a year. Maintenance charges for electric vehicles aren't really that much, so I've just put in a 250 there, but for a Honda Activa, let's assume 2,500. So where does all of this lead us? Look at the numbers and you have a clear winner. The Ola S1 will set you back by about 94,000 or less, whereas an Activa is actually going to cost you more. So as far as that total cost of ownership analysis is concerned, electric vehicles do turn out to be cheaper, at least by these assumptions that we've made.
By these assumptions, definitely. But you know, you said the car, the Ola S1 costs about 1 lakh rupees minus subsidies.
Yeah.
With subsidies is about 90,000 rupees. So 10,000 rupees that you save is the one that plays a huge role in making it cost effective. And it's a nascent market in India. The government of India, under its faster adoption and manufacturing of electric vehicles, or FAME2 scheme as we know it, has an outlay of 10,000 crore rupees towards making these electric vehicles viable, giving the subsidies as well. At least 22 states, they've announced various incentives as well. The GST on EV and chargers are lower than the traditional GST. We have an income tax deduction as well. Nearly 2,600 EV charging stations sanctioned, and the government has approved almost $10 billion, that's 75,000 crore rupees in terms of production-linked incentive schemes, PLIs as we know it, for EV batteries and auto components. And an important question then here is, how long can these EV players sustain without this subsidy that you talk about?
Well, to get some more insight into that, we also asked the questions, the key motivations for customers and the key concerns when they're looking to buy an electric vehicle. So that brings us to the yay and nay segment. So I'll start with the yays first. We asked the respondents what is the top reason that they would buy an electric vehicle, and here's what the respondents said. Saving on fuel cost was the key reason that they said they would switch to an electric vehicle, and why not? Petrol and diesel prices are at an all-time high. A third of the respondents also said that they would pick an electric vehicle because of the fact that it is eco-friendly. There's some bit of consciousness there as well.
There is some consciousness there, but while you've explained the facts on the cost of running an EV versus a traditional scooter, if you must, the fuel costs remain the key reason for people to buy an electric vehicle. Let's talk about some facts on running an EV versus a traditional vehicle on a per kilometer basis. For a low-speed two-wheeler, it's a clear cost advantage, as Ritu said, to own an electric vehicle. But if you have a car, a four-wheeler, it's still unviable without the subsidy to go ahead and drive it. And this is for average users like you and me, driving no more than 35 kilometers in a city per day. An electric vehicle would be about 2 rupees or 3 rupees per liter more expensive than per kilometer more expensive than diesel or petrol. But the magic of EVs is visible in long distance travel. If you drive almost 190 kilometers per day, which commercial fleet, a lot of the taxis do go ahead and drive, the denominator increases, and as does the per kilometer cost. So with subsidy, an electric vehicle per kilometer costs 3 rupees. This compares with petrol and diesel costs of around 4.2 to 4.9. So it's about a rupee per kilometer cheaper. Also, the important part is that, if you go ahead and buy an electric vehicle at higher rising fuel prices, then it may, tilt the scales in favor of electric vehicles.
Cost is one part of it, but also one of the big reasons that people want an electric vehicle is because it's environment friendly. But it's not as simple as that. There is a lot of nuance to this. Now, while they do reduce pollutants in the city, at the end of the day, the source of electricity with which EVs are charged, that is still largely thermal. So therefore, the net impact on eco-friendliness of electric vehicles is still a question a lot of experts are still looking for an answer to.
Alright then, let's talk about some real drawbacks, and there are some real fears for people, including me, when thinking of purchasing an electric vehicle. And what's clear is the lack of charging infra. Fears around battery, distance, longevity, and the uncertainty over a vehicle's performance due to the limited history that we have are clear deterrents for people to go ahead and buy electric vehicles. Ritu, my biggest fear is if I go ahead and buy an electric vehicle, drive on the roads, remember that I forgot to charge it, I don't know where to find the next charging station. More importantly, if I'm stuck on a highway with a car not functioning, what do I do? Call a mechanic? I don't know who that is.
That fear is very, very real because lack of adequate infrastructure, for EVs is a concern because, there are 77,000 plus petrol pumps, fuel stations across the country. So drivers can go out with confidence if they're using a traditional two-wheeler or four-wheeler without the fear of being stranded because a few kilometers down the road, they will find a petrol pump. Whereas for electric vehicles, the fuel comes from the charge that is left in the battery. And India, guess what, currently has only 1,800 EV charging stations.
And that brings us to our final point on electric vehicles. We asked the respondents what will make your decision to buy an electric vehicle easier. We asked them again, what will make your decision to buy an electric vehicle easier? That's how important this question is. And this is what they said. If only there was better charging infra, and the decision to buy an EV would then be easier. But in my case, Ritu, you at the start of the show did say that you are tilting towards an electric vehicle. You hail from Lucknow, I would say, pehle aap, because 10 out of 100 people have gone ahead and said they'll wait for others, perhaps their neighbors, to go ahead and buy an electric vehicle.
All right, I take your point. But we know that the lack of charging infrastructure could actually topple the apple cart, and in this case, the electric vehicle cart, and therefore a primer on the projections of charging station additions and the expected growth in EV demand that is expected. Now, under FAME 2 that we'd spoken about, the total project pipeline of EV charging stations is about 4,100, with about 2,600 that have already been sanctioned and another 1,500 plus that are in the pipeline. But are these much enough? How many more public chargers does India really need to meet its growing EV demand? And that is the big question that we need to look at as well.
Absolutely, we do need to look at that, and there may be an answer to that in what's happening in the world. For example, the Alternative Fuel Infrastructure Directive, or AFID, which is a key policy regulating the deployment of public electric vehicle supply equipment in the European Union, has recommended that member states aim for one public charger per 10 electric vehicles in 2020. So as the number of electric vehicles rise, they have to increase the level of infrastructure as well. So one per 10 cars is what the European mandate is. For India, we Indians are used to, going ahead and working with less as well. So to get a desirable number in India, we need to expand our infrastructure accordingly. What is that desirable number for India? We are able to do with a lot less. So what if we have one public charger for, say, 25 cars, 50 cars or 75 cars, much lower or much lower in terms of numbers as compared to Europe? That rate would require close to 38,000 to 1.16 lakh public chargers. Well, this is a far cry from the projection of almost 4,200 currently. The question is the industry looking at it?
Well, that is the bigger question, Mangalam, that we're going to ask. Is India's electric vehicle ambition running on low battery? We will be posing that question to Sohinder Gill, the CEO of Hero Electric, and Sandeep Bangia, the head of Tata Power's EV charging business, the largest players in the country on that front. On the other side of this short break, don't go anywhere. Welcome back. You're watching Mad About Markets, and back to that big question that we posed right before the break. Will India ever have adequate charging infra to be able to power its EV dream? Mangalam.
Well, let's get quacking then. We have with us the best men on the job at this point in time. Sohinder Gill, the CEO of Hero Electric, and Sandeep Bangia. He heads Tata Power's EV charging business, so they're best placed to tell us whether the EV dream will have enough battery or not. Thanks a lot, gentlemen, for joining in. Sohinder, coming right to you first. I don't see as many EVs on our roads. It's still a nascent, niche sort of concept. When will they ever, or will they ever become mass market products?
Well, it's not a question of will it happen or not. It's a question of when will it happen. So on two-wheelers, it's going to happen very soon. So also commercial vehicles, which make business sense. On cars, it will take time, and buses is a government agenda. So it's in various spans of time, you'll find electric mobility taking over IC engine to a great extent.
So in there you said it's a question of when and not a question of if. So let me ask you that. How long will it take for electric vehicles, and I'm talking both two-wheelers as well as four-wheelers, to actually be able to become mass market products?
We are almost there on the verge of explosion in case of two-wheelers, which is, I think, around 18 to 24 months away from an exponential growth point of view. As far as four-wheelers are concerned, surely the first charging infrastructure or the confidence of charging has to set in. Otherwise, it will be only premium cars which can do 400 kilometers in one charge, because anybody who wants to buy a car would think of going intercity sometime. So for them, either you depend on a charging infrastructure, or you go for a very premium car, which is very niche, or you go for a second car. You already have one and you want to have a second one which goes only 80 to 100 kilometers. That can be an affordable car. All this means, I think the car exponential growth to start is at least 3 to 4 years away, and obviously that much lag would be there in that.
All right, 3 to 4 years away for cars, but two-wheelers are coming in the next 18 to 24 months. So you spoke about the charging infra, and that's where Sandeep comes in. Sandeep, what is the current charging infra that we have? What are your expansion plans? Because I don't see any electric vehicle chargers around me.
Tata Power Easy Charge currently has 600 plus chargers in the country. Public chargers, that is, does not include home chargers and semi-public chargers, which is about 50% plus market share today. We are putting up about 3,000 chargers in the current fiscal, and depending on the penetration of vehicles, I think we are committed to putting up to 100,000 chargers, public chargers, in the next maybe 7 to 10 years time frame.
But Sandeep, do you think the planned charging infra addition that we have, about 4,000 odd under the FAME 2 scheme, is that going to be sufficient to meet the growing EV demand in the country?
So 4,000 as a number of chargers, are they enough or not, is completely dependent on how the EV penetration takes up. For EV penetration to go up, really, you need to have a wider choice of vehicles and at the right price point. And, we are possibly at a cost. One or two significantly important cars or significantly attractive cars at the right price point is going to trigger off this ecosystem.
You have it there, Surinder. Just around 1,800 chargers that we have right now, at best goes to around 4,000. What happens when that 18 to 24 month promised two-wheeler revolution comes by? Everyone's very scared whether there will be enough charge.
The segment like two-wheeler is not really too much dependent on charging infra so much, but still, yes, there is a lot of unfolding on charging infra which is happening, even from Hero side, and association members are also doing it. And there are simple charging sockets all the way.
Well, just to emphasize more on that point, because our poll also showed that the lack of charging infra is the biggest concern when making the decision to buy an electric vehicle. How would you allay their fear, Sandeep, as the largest player in the space?
Public charging infrastructure is largely required for two types. Number one, it's meant for intercity travel, because when you are going from, let us say, Mumbai to Bangalore, you need to charge along the route. And secondly, it's for emergency charging. If you have forgotten to charge at home, or when you are traveling a larger distance, so you need a charger at the public locations. Now, this is exactly where people like us come in, and we are deploying chargers along those routes which are logical pit stops, which are malls, offices, and those kind of places.
Okay, I take your point. So that allays some of my fears. But Surinder, after sales service, what if I go ahead and buy an two-wheeler, and after that, there is maintenance required, some problem with the vehicle? How do I go ahead and address that?
Any two-wheeler, electric two-wheeler, can be easily serviced except for a major breakdown at your home, near your home also. So that's so easy to do. It's only a question of maybe another few months that you will find presence of a lot of roadside mechanics across the country in the various density pockets.
Okay, sure. So that is easily serviceable, but what about the battery life itself? I mean, how often will I have to replace it, and how much would it cost me to replace this battery, say, versus petrol vehicles?
We believe it will be for a moderate user up to 5 to 6 years. and the batteries itself, the cost of batteries, because our battery sizes are very low, very small. Our battery sizes are something like 1.2 kilowatt each, which is around 16,000 to 18,000 rupees. A replacement of a battery, such a battery after 4 years average, would mean only 4,000 a month, or 4,000 a year. Whereas every day, if you use 100 rupees of a petrol, imagine you are using 30,000 rupees of petrol every year.
You know, we noticed that a large chunk of the economics of owning an electric vehicle is because of the subsidy that the government is giving. What happens if the subsidy on electric vehicles is withdrawn? Will the industry then sustain? Will it still be as cheap to go ahead and buy an electric vehicle?
We believe today the scale that we have is so small that the gap is being filled up by subsidy, particularly in the city speed vehicles, which are not getting a lot of subsidies. For example, the subsidy in our case is less than half of what the premium end vehicles are getting. So in fact, this is a shock which perhaps would happen more on the premium end when the subsidy goes away. A vehicle which is costing 1 lakh today will start costing 1.5 lakhs because 50,000 is subsidy there. In our case, the subsidy is something like 20,000 or something, 18,000, 20,000. We feel very strongly in the strategies and the range that we are in. The subsidy, when it gets tapered off, our scales will more than offset any cost arbitration.
Sandeep and Sohinder, thanks very much for joining in. I don't know about you, Mangalam, but I'm excited about the future of EVs in India.
Well, I'm still fearful, but let's see, a little more optimistic if you must. But enough about EVs. There's a lot else that happened as well. And in case you missed it, here's all that took place last week. This is ICYMI. Facebook's latest fetish about finance. That's in the news. The social media giant is joining hands with an Indian online lending firm, IndyFi, to provide loans to small businesses. Facebook says that it's not looking to make money from this. Classic Facebook that is, but it's upbeat that it creates growth in the industry that will eventually benefit it. So basically, that is classic Facebook. If something's for free, you are the product. The platform is going to provide loans of almost 5 lakh rupees to 50 lakh rupees to small businesses for an annual interest rate of 20%. But these small businesses have to be advertising on Facebook or its group apps for the last 180 days. How's that for traditional lenders?
That's an interesting space that we'll have to watch out for. Now, meanwhile, as more and more Indian buyers are embracing online shopping, the e-commerce landscape is also changing to reflect the needs and aspirations of these new online buyers. Now, global management consultancy firm Kearney expects India's booming e-commerce market to grow almost tenfold in the coming decade, from $4 billion to $40 billion by 2030. And this boom, they say, will be driven by the value-conscious online shoppers. It's all the rage, isn't it, Mangalam?
It is the rage online, but it's not just online. Indians are now on a revenge, not only on a revenge travel spree, but a revenge shopping spree as well. At guess where? Indian airports. Knight Frank pegs India's airport retail segment to grow to $9.3 billion by 2030. What's its current size? $1.6 billion. Knight Frank estimates the airport retail developments in both Mumbai as well as Delhi to garner twice the revenue when it compares to successful malls in both the cities, Oberoi and Select City Walk Mall in Delhi as well. Nearly 1 out of 3 rupees generated in airports is coming in from retail, F&B and duty-free components too. This is at Delhi's Indira Gandhi Airport. Plans to develop regional airports by the government, revamp old airports, will only further boost airport retail. That's a big segment.
Well, it is. Speaking of airports and not flying anywhere right now, but in the world's most populous country, they have an unexpected problem on hands, and that is too few babies. The number of births in China in 2021 could be the lowest since 1950. Now, this is one of the reasons why the government is cracking down on industries like education to bring down costs and promote bigger families. Now, in a major policy shift which is aimed at preventing a steep decline in birth rates, China's national legislature has now formally endorsed the 3-child policy, which was mooted by the ruling Communist Party. It has promised to boost support for families, including making it cheaper to raise a child in China.
Whether you birth a child or adopt it, we don't know, but definitely Globe is adopting cryptocurrency. The crypto fever continues. Global Crypto Adoption Index by blockchain data platform Chain Analysis. It ranks 154 countries. It showed that worldwide crypto adoption grew 881% in the last 1 year. India ranks second in this adoption index. But the biggest surprise came in from the political turmoil, Afghanistan making its entrance at the 20th place in 2021. This after it didn't even make the list last year. What could be the reason? A cash shortage and a rapidly plunging currency along with volatile political conditions may have pushed young Afghans towards digital currencies as safe havens.
Alright, it's time now for the last segment of the show, and that is What's Lit. Now meet Tata, the human robot who's absolutely a pro at parkour. Designed by Boston Dynamics, these robots have taken the internet by storm with their leaps and backflips, and within hours of the release, this video became one of the top 10 trends in US Twitter.
And Boston Dynamics says that their engineers have also managed to generalize Atlas's behavior by providing it with a set of template behaviors such as jumping, vaulting, and letting it adjust those behaviors to new scenarios it faces. Quite Akshay Kumar-like, if you must.
Oh my God. With that, we're out of time on Mad About Markets, but see you same time next week.
Stay mad.